The Bruins re-sign Bergeron and Krejci. Give us your unvarnished reaction.
What's going on with him?
Oh, he found out that Bergeron and Krejci are both re-signing with the Bruins this year.
Wow. Big news.
Oh, yeah, big.
So what, he just lost consciousness out of excitement?
No, he's super dead. Oh yeah, his heart gave out.
Shouldn't we do something about that?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Want to get some beers?
Dude, let's go get beers. Yeah.
Low quality fans of a high quality Bruins team. Welcome back. We're still high quality. Well, until we decide we're not high quality, we're still high quality. Just trust me on that. We are doing a mailbag. We're going to go through a bunch of questions you guys sent in. Awesome questions. I don't know if I got all of them. I tried my best to make sure I snagged them all. We are going to answer most of them. There is a little asterisk. Little asterisk. We're not going to do the questions that were, how do you fill out the rest of the roster? We're going to do that at the end of the season, the end of the actual playoffs. We'll talk way more about free agency and dive way into that. We're a little too early. There's still a lot in the air. There's still a lot being figured out. And I'm going to be honest. It's hard to answer any of those questions without a Bergeron answer. So, if he doesn't give us an update in the next 2.5 weeks, well, we're going to have to make the video maybe 2 times and just figure out what happens. But we're just going to stick with the normal questions. There's some free agency stuff that I'll talk a little bit about, but we're not going to dive into the, hey, what do you do this offseason? Hey, who are you chasing? Those kind of questions. Those will be answered just in a later video. By the way, thank you, Van Allen, for that first question, which led to the skit. I appreciate it very much. My reaction would be basically that, so I think I did that justice. It was hard to find a place to actually start this with one question where I went, oh, this will get us right into it. There were a lot of great questions, but one of the ones that I thought really were topical, because we think that there's going to be a lot of prospect time in the NHL to start next season, is, besides Liesel, which prospect are you excited to see in a Bruins jersey sooner or later? This comes from Bruins Coverage on Twitter. Great question. I know the obvious answer is Lohrei. I think a lot of people were talking about that, where, I mean, that's the guy who seems to be our second best prospect after Liesel. But right now, I feel like I know what I'm going to get out of Lohrei in a couple years, or at least hopeful what I'll get from him. Merkulov, if I'm even saying that right, I'm really excited to see what he can do next year in Providence and what time he'll see in the NHL, because there's something mysterious about the guy. He can put the puck in the net. He shoots abnormally high shooting percentages. I'm really kind of curious about what he can be. Not great defensively, but just has an eye for the net, decent playmaker, good hands, good speed. That's the guy that I'm most interested in right now. I want him to be part of the prospect challenge, whatever the setup is for that before the season, and I'm excited about the preseason games with him involved in it. That's my answer. Merkulov is probably the one I'm most curious about right now. Keeping it in a similar ballpark, we have a question from Nick. How can the Bruins effectively promote Studnicka and keep him in the lineup? I think this is as much on Studnicka as it is anybody else. But my goal going into a season with this many injuries, with this much uncertainty down the center, I take Studnicka, I put him in the middle 6, preferably between Hall and Pasta, and I give him 10 games. And I try to keep his line mates as consistent as possible, and I try to let the leash off a little bit. Let him make some real mistakes. Let him really play his game for a full 2.5, 3 weeks. 10 games is about 3 weeks. You let him have some consistency in the NHL just for a little while. First week's probably rough. Second week, we might see some improvement. And third week, hey, it's that fast where guys start to catch up to the speed. This guy should be at a level where he's ready for the NHL or he won't be. I want to see him in a top 6, but at worst, middle 6 role with some consistency. I don't Want to see him jumbled around the lineup, tossed on the fourth line, thrown over to the wing. I don't think that helps him. If after 10 games he looks terrible, then look, we sort of have a huge answer right there. And then we can drop him down the lineup or find a place where he fits, whatever. But let's see if we can put him somewhere where we thought his skill set would suit and see if it sticks. That's what I would do. And it's no guarantee, but if you're going to go into the start of the season looking that bad anyway, this is a really good way to at least bring some excitement to the viewers who want to see what this kid has. And again, keeping with the prospects, Gordon Zombie asks, what are your thoughts on Ashawn? Is Ashawn ready for the next step? I was never as high on Ashawn as a lot of the people around me. I do like his style. I think he's a bulldog. We've talked about that before. I never see him being better than a third pairing defenseman. I don't think he adds a ton of value to this team, if I'm going to be honest. I like him and I want him to be better, but I just don't see it with Ashawn. I don't think he adds a lot of value. Might be a decent puck-moving 6th or 7th defenseman, you know? Just not very high on him, which is a bummer. But let's get away from the prospects for a second. We got a question here from Zach. What is the one thing you are excited to see from the Bees next year? And what are you scared to see from the Bees next season? I'm excited to see all of our young guys come in to start the season. I'm excited to see them really get a chance. I want to see who's brought up. I think Liesel has a real good shot of coming out of camp and being thrown right on the roster, depending on how all these injuries shake out. That being said, what I'm most scared of is we bring in all these young guys and we're fucking awful. Like, what if we bring them in and we start 2-8 on the season? Which feels realistic, but we have some really great players that are going to be healthy and ready to go. Just depends on what this offseason looks like. I'm terrified of a rebuild. We all are. No one wants their team to suck. Yes, we can know it's the right decision at times, but I'm scared of it. I don't want to see our team not be able to compete. I want to see us get into the playoffs and who knows, make a miracle run. But I'm scared of a lot of things. And the biggest thing is the rebuild starts and our young guys come in, they suck. Speaking of rebuild, I got a couple questions here from Robert McNeil. Grizz and Carlo, the second pair next year? If Grizz is still around, yeah, sure. That is going to be a pair when McAvoy's back to healthy, when the entire unit's healthy. Grizz Carlo is a pair they really like, that they thought they could have gotten more out of in the playoffs, that they're surprised floundered like that. From the rumblings from the front office, it seems to me that they are okay going, that was a shoulder injury for Grizz. That was not what Grizz brings us. I don't think the front office is looking at Grizzlick as a guy that can't contribute in the playoffs. Whether that be right or wrong, I'm glad they at least have a stance on it. It's the vibe I'm getting. Maybe I'm wrong. I see Grizz being here next year, and I see him being very important to the top 4. He goes on to ask, how do they fix the bottom 6 next year? Now, I'm not going to talk about what we slot in and out, because, again, we're going to do that after the season's over. But he lists off Frederick, Smith, Foligno, Nosek. Are they good enough? Nosek, I thought was going to be better. I might just have to start eating some crow on it, because I keep going back and looking at the numbers and just going, he didn't add all that much. But I still have high hopes for Nosek. Foligno, you know my thoughts on. Smith, I'm higher on Smith than everybody else. Man, everyone just went, man, Smith sucks. Didn't do anything in the playoffs. Didn't have a huge year. I love him as a guy you can just bounce around and know where you're getting in the lineup. I like Smith a lot. I would not commit to him long term after this season, because I believe we're at his final year, but I'd have to check that. The biggest question here, we need to bring in depth. We know that. We know that. None of that changes. Frederick. Trent Frederick is 24 years old. He could still take one last leap. This offseason, he's now been with the team for a couple of years, like really with the team. This offseason, if he puts his head down, grinds, and makes some improvements, he's very much good enough to be in our bottom 6 and be a game changer. I really was buying into a lot of the stuff he was doing. I know I didn't give him the greatest grade in the world. A lot of people wanted him to be at an A. He's improved from what we saw 2 years ago. If he takes another leap, I'm really confident this guy can be solid for us. But he's the only name, honestly, on that list of Frederick, Smith, Foligno, Nosek that I actually really think can be a game changer next year in the bottom six. Really like Smith, but we know what we're getting from Smith. Frederick could break a game open if he makes the leap I think he's capable of making. So to answer the question, they bring in help. They bring in help for the bottom six. How often have we had that conversation, though? Do you trust the guy who's making those decisions? I've been a Sweeney defender for a long time, but after this recent exit and just the lack of depth scoring again, you can only have the problem for so long before you start going, hey, maybe the guy who's supposed to fix the problem and hasn't been for 5 years, maybe that guy's a problem. It's a little unfair to say 5 years. That 2019 Cup run had some depth scoring, but, you know. Let's do a fun one real quick. This comes from Knucklepuck. Would you rather fight 100 rat-sized Brad Marchands or one Brad Marchand-sized rat? Great question. I'm going to put in my hypotheticals here. The Brad Marchands, the 100 Brad Marchands, size of an average rat, they do not get to wear skates. Nope, that's not fair. But they do all get sticks and helmets. That seems pretty fair to me. The one giant rat, it has to be on skates. That feels fair. Because it already has claws. I'm going to take the 100 Marchands. Because the end result is probably way worse if I lose. Because it's probably a slower death. But I also know that a Brad Marchand-sized rat would rip me apart. So I'm going to fight the 100 Brad Marchands and hope that they go down pretty easy, even though I know they won't. So it's a good question. Good question. We're going to bounce around a little bit. Let's talk something that's a really easy answer, but kind of sucks. Does a rebuild only happen if Bergeron does not return? This question was asked by Sean. Bergeron not returning is the only way a rebuild starts. So yes, it's just worded a little differently. We don't, if Bergeron says, hey, I'm coming back, and we accept that, then we don't do a rebuild this year. If he says, hey, I want to come back, and Sweeney goes, we are going to start the rebuild this year, then, I don't know, Bergeron probably doesn't come back, right? So, yes, in that sense, it only happens without Bergeron. If Bergeron comes back, we take another swing. Sounds like the front office wants to take another swing. After Sweeney's presser, I kind of went, wow, this sounds rebuild city. But then he started making comments about we're still a good team and we still have the pieces and we got to figure out where we stand after the injuries. So it might end up being a 1-year retool. But does a 1-year retool happen if Bergeron resigns? I don't think so. It's very, very, very difficult decisions to be made. And I understand why Bergeron's taking so much time making the decision because, shit, who knows what's coming right now? The Cassidy firing was huge. I don't know if that makes it more likely or less likely Bergeron resigns. I don't know. But I do know we don't rebuild while Bergeron's signed. I know that. I like this next one. It's kind of a personal one from James. What's your personal history with the sport of hockey? Did you play? If not, what made you grow to love it? So I played deck hockey for 12 years because my greatest shame as a masshole, I can't fucking skate, man. Man, I've tried and I've tried and I've tried. I played soccer. I had a scholarship to play D1 soccer. It's not the footwork, man. I don't know why I can't skate. I just can't. I can't. So I played a very long time of deck hockey. And I was good. I was pretty good. I just can't do what these other guys do. I fell in love with the sport because it felt like the only real sport on the planet. I played every sport growing up that I could. And every sport that I played, I thought was just the only thing that mattered in my life. I loved to compete. That's all I wanted to do. And the more I competed, the more I watched professional leagues. The problem is, soccer, if you're a soccer fan, you know this to be true. It's just a lot of diving. And Diego Milito took the fucking love of that sport away from me. He was my favorite player. And I watched him take a blatant dive. No one touched him. And right there, I was like, done. Can't do it anymore. I watched for years. Couldn't do it anymore. Basketball is basketball, man. There's a lot of politics and stuff with that stuff. I don't think it's rigged, but I think the refs have a heavy hand on affecting games, and it feels a little too obvious sometimes. Football's a lot, man. I like football. I really do. Just couldn't get into it the way I got into hockey. Hockey was always us, we. It just felt like it was a competition of true teams fighting each other, especially when I was growing up. And the Unrivaled documentary coming out with the Red Wings and the Avs, like that was prime youth for me watching that. You want to talk about falling in love with a sport? Patrick Wall was my hero as a kid. Just an absolute hero. The way he said "fuck you" to the Canadians and went on to win it. Just awesome. So that's kind of my history with it. Loved hockey for a very long time, and I really, really sucked at skating. So I could never truly play. Maybe I'll get back into it. I gotta get health insurance first, though. Another hypothetical here. Will the team be better if Bergeron retires and Krejci returns for another season and the Bruins acquire a top 6 center? So you'd have Krejci, a top 6 center, instead of Bergeron. Or better if Bergeron comes back, Howla stays at 2C, and they upgrade the bottom 6. With the slow slope that Bergeron's on, you know, he's going to fall off a little bit more offensively next year. Might fall off defensively. Who knows? This season was incredible. I would say you're actually better off with a Krejci and a true top 6 center than you would be with Bergeron and Howla. Even with upgrading the bottom 6. But what does an upgrade to the bottom 6 really mean in this case? This is a really tough question. I'm going to go you're better off having two true top 6 centers than you are in really any other scenario with just one. I might not be crediting Bergeron quite enough with that, but that's what the answer is for me. That's another one from Gordon Zombie. This next one comes from Mike Williams. In reality, how far off was this Bruins group last year? Do we just heal up and do our best to load up for another run? I do think we end up just healing up and trying to load up for another run unless things really go off the tracks. I can't speak today. Unless things really go off the tracks this offseason. That being said, we were not the best team in the league this year. I did not believe by the time the conference finals came around, I didn't believe we belonged there. Even had we won Game 7 against Carolina, we might have made the conference finals. But I'm seeing a level from these teams that I hadn't seen from the Bruins all season, really. Just an extra dig deep. And I know these teams have it in them with this crunch time, and I believe the Bruins could have dug deep and everything. But with a lack of depth, I don't think we were there. We need at least 2 pretty big pieces to be in that conversation. And the Avalanche are just steamrolling everyone. So let's just say we weren't quite there. Playoff team for sure. Stanley Cup winner, no, not this last year. But you got to believe, you know, and sometimes you can hindsight your way back into that and go, yeah, we didn't have it. But the season's only fun for me if I believe we can either A, make the playoffs and make a run, or B, well, we've got a goal in mind, such as Bedard at the end of next season when we tank. We're not tanking. It's fine. Ari asks, would you rather have a team that wins a cup and sucks for 10 years or a team that is perennially good but never wins it? Easy. I would rather have a cup every 10 years. I know you didn't say every 10 years, but I'm going to read it as every 10 years. I will suck for a decade between every cup as long as there's a cup coming. Absolutely. If it is always first, second, third, or fourth round finishes, but never a win, I mean, no. That sounds awful. That sounds terrible. And I think when people take a step back and think about that, think about going to the finals 4 years in a row and losing. Just every time. Always. Second round, great team. Made a second round, just got beat by a hot goaltender. Conference finals, but you ran into a juggernaut. Finals, but you just couldn't get over the hump. You want a cup. You don't care how you have to get it. You want a cup. 100%. I would rather suck for 10 years and win a cup. How do the injuries impact the Bruins offseason? Do we use LTIR? Do we give some kids a shot and wait it out? That comes from Army Bear on Twitter. The injuries impact the offseason negligibly unless Bergeron retires. If Bergeron comes back, the injuries are the injuries. You hope the young guys can come up, fill the need in the meantime. Maybe 1 or 2 sticks even when the injuries are over. But that's the goal right now, is to still compete next year. LTIR will be used as soon as the season starts. That's when you can really, really start using it. And the way that works is you accrue days of cap hit. So come trade deadline, we will have a lot of cap space to work with likely because it's cap we didn't use prior to it. There's a simpler way to say it, I feel like, or maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but we will accrue plenty of cap space. We should, I believe, by the time the deadline comes around. What trade would you have made at the deadline to buttress the third line production? And how do you fix the third line going forward? You fix the third line by Trent Frederick taking a big step or Oscar Steen being ready. There are going to be moves in the offseason that we're going to explore and we're going to talk about. But like I mentioned, I'm just not there yet with the free agency class and what we're going to do. I've been taking notes. I've been bringing stuff up. But we're going to leave that conversation alone. But I did want to bring up this question from Anish. I don't know actually how to say that. But he's a long time follower and watcher of the channel. He's a great dude. The trade that I would have made at the deadline, that is just, it's a lot of hindsight, right? But man, I really wish there was a story that came out. This is going to sound stupid. I wish there was a story that came out about Kessel where we really took a swing to like, come on, man, send us Kessel. We'll give you an asset and we can see if we can have a little run here. Because I thought Kessel really does add that scoring, that finishing touch. I would have really explored that cheaper option. And I am surprised. I'm surprised that we didn't really hear. Maybe he wanted to stay. I've heard a little bit of that. But that's kind of the guy I was looking at. So that you could at least move DeBrusk back down and see if maybe he had built up that confidence enough to make a difference with Coyle. Just wasn't enough. I really would have looked at the Kessel stuff. I don't know. That seems silly now, but really would have. The final question. And this is I think it's a really cool question, but I wanted to put it at the end because it's not hockey related, really. As someone who tried last year to do a Bruins game review like you, what were some of the tips of the trade that you had to learn to succeed without looking like you're biting off predecessors such as Steve Dangle? This comes from Jocelyn, the MH on Twitter. It's a good question. I was terrified of doing this. In my first couple of videos, I think, did bite off from Steve Dangle a little bit. I think they were a little too much, but they also weren't me. Our vibes of our videos and our styles are completely different. Now, yeah, we're both doing something very similar. One of us is having a little more success than the other. I'll let you venture at that. One of us has also been doing it for fucking 15 years. I think his style is built perfectly for the Leafs. He yells, he screams, and people love it. They love it. I like what Steve Dangle does. I think he's a very knowledgeable hockey fan. I think he's built a fucking empire out of what he's done. I think it's really cool. And he was an inspiration when it came to actually starting this. Because I kept talking about doing this for a decade, and I always had an excuse. And I forget, but he posted something on Twitter about where I started and where I am now. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast or on this channel. And I looked at it and I'm like, God damn, man, why don't I just do it? Just do it. And so I started, and the first couple of videos were all over the place, and I just kept going. And I found a vibe that I liked, and I found an attitude that I liked that really matched me. I like to uplift. I like optimism. I like talking about the team and showing that I support these guys and I want everyone to succeed. And I have my negativity moments, as you know. But it was never a concern that I was copying somebody because I was strictly just trying to find what I wanted to do. If you're just trying to copy someone, you're going to fall off because you're not going to enjoy it. As long as you're doing what you wanted to do and you are proud of the way that they're coming out, and trust me, I'm my own biggest critic. I'm not proud of every episode, but I'll criticize everything. if you're proud of what you're doing, you're not going to be copying anybody. And there's always going to be people in my mentions who refer to me as the Walmart Steve Dangle or send me DMs that are rather unpleasant because they think I'm copying him or whatever it is. Can't let that stuff bother you, because people are just going to be like that. I have gotten some very weird, fucked up messages that you just have to look at and go, I don't even answer it. Who cares? That is just somebody who is not winning at life right now. Somebody who's down, and they're just down low and they want to take it out on somebody. So my biggest advice would just be make the videos you want to make. And if someone wants to say you're copying someone else, fuck them. Just do what you want to do, man. That's all that matters. That's all that matters with it. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. I greatly appreciate them. I had a good time answering these. I know that there is going to be some more in-depth questions. I'm trying to keep some of these around for once we get to the free agency talk. I know it's kind of a bummer we're not doing that yet, but I need to see a little bit more how this shakes out over the next week or two, because we're going to start talking about really big decisions, and it still hinges on Bergeron, which is a little sad to say. I mean, he is just generational talent in the 200-foot game. But still, he is a 37-year-old center. We really did have 10 years to draft another center behind Bergeron and Krejci, and we failed. That's kind of amazing to think about. Fuck. All right. Well, like, comment, subscribe, and go Bees!